Resident Evil Genesis, a novelization by Keith R.A. De Candido. Chapter 19. Before today, Bart Kaplan's world made sense. Before today, computers didn't go on homicidal rampages, killing 500 people for no good reason. Before today, he and his team were top pros, always achieving their mission objectives. Before today, the team always came home alive. Before today, dead people didn't get up and walk around. He wasn't sure how it got so bad so fast. 1 second he was standing with JD, Rain, Alice, Spence, and that Addison guy. The next they were surrounded. After the tank exploded, he was knocked to the floor, but he got up quickly and started unloading his Beretta into the walking corpses that simply would not stop for anything. His ears were ringing. Somehow, he and JD wound up back to back. They were just around the corner from the door that would take them back to the hallway where the offices and labs were. "We lost the others." "Keep moving," JD said as he fired his rifle into the crowd. They inched closer. Finally reaching the door, Kaplan thought his head was going to explode from the noise of gunfire, the explosion, and the screaming. Not to mention the image of his 4 comrades being killed while he was helpless to do anything about it. Spence was standing there as Kaplan holstered his pistol and approached the keypad. Surprised, Kaplan asked, "You waited?" Leaving aside the fact that he was unarmed, this particular iteration of Spence Parks didn't strike Kaplan as the gung-ho, take one for the team type. More like the run away and save his own butt type. Didn't know the code. Run away and save his own butt it was then. Luckily, Kaplan did know the code. All he had to do was summon it from the recesses of his brain. The problem was doing it through the pounding headache. He entered 0431961. Nothing happened. "Damn." "Come on," Spence said. He entered the code again. Again, nothing. "God damn it." He didn't get it. That was the code. He was sure of it. If only the noise would stop. Spence, still being his usual useful self, said, "Hurry up." As if it would make a difference, he entered 0431961 more slowly. Yet again, nothing. Damn it. JD ran up to the door, grabbed Kaplan, and shoved him out of the way. "Move! What's the code?" Under other circumstances, Kaplan would have objected to this course of action, but maybe there was something wrong with the way he was entering it. Not that there was any trick to it, really. You just entered the 8 numbers. "Move," JD said. "What's the code?" "Hurry up," Rain called from a few feet off. "I'm running out of ammo." Pulling out his Beretta and shooting into the ever nearer crowd, Kaplan yelled out, 043. Then it hit him. 8 numbers. He'd left out a digit. "No! Damn it!" Spence walked up to Kaplan and got right in his face. Kaplan was tempted to turn his pistol on the arrogant jerk. "What is the code?" Kaplan took a breath. 040311961. Got it. JD entered the code. Then he turned to look at Kaplan as the door slid open. See how easy that was? Behind the door was a sea of former hive workers. Kaplan didn't know what the look on his own face was, but he imagined it was very similar to the look of abject shock on JD's as dozens of hands grabbed him and pulled him into the hallway. A second later, and Kaplan couldn't even see JD anymore. "JD!" Rain came out of nowhere and dove in after him. Was she out of her mind? Kaplan ran up to her and grabbed her arm. To his shock, Spence helped. No sense in losing both of them. One of them bit Rain in the neck, even as Kaplan and Spence yanked her out. Kaplan quickly slammed his hand on the switch that would shut the door after shooting one in the face. Again, Rain screamed. JD! Forget it, Spence said. He's gone. Pounding her fist on the door, Rain screamed, God damn it! The sweat beaded on Kaplan's brow. This wasn't supposed to be happening. One, Warner, Drew, Olga, and now JD. They weren't supposed to die. Hell, JD and Rain were the toughest things on two legs. All you had to do to know that was watch them for 5 minutes. And one was just the best. If even JD couldn't survive this, if even one couldn't survive this, what kind of a chance did some computer geek named Kaplan have? Come on, Spence said, pointing across the hall. There's a clear path back to that computer room. Kaplan nodded. He turned to Rain. Come on, Rain. They killed JD, man. They killed him. Spence grabbed her arm. They're gonna kill us if we don't move it. Shrugging off Spence's hand without looking at him, Rain turned and moved for the door. Kaplan followed, as did Spence. As they ran, Rain asked, So what did happen to the rest of the team? Are they zombie food too? No, the Red Queen's defenses got them. Rain stopped and grabbed Kaplan by the shoulder. Say what? I thought you were supposed to bring down... Spence pushed them both forward, one with each hand. Can you two kill each other later? Throwing his head back, he indicated the hordes of people shuffling toward them. Kaplan ran ahead. He opened the door to the Red Queen's chamber, waited for Spence and Rain to come in, then shut the door behind them. It was his fault, all of it. He'd tried not to think about it, but Rain was right. It was his responsibility. Dead people all over the place, and the people best qualified to stop them were cut to ribbons before his eyes. Because he missed something, because he screwed up, over half the team was dead. Whatever they are, there's too many of them out there, Rain said. Whatever they are? Kaplan repeated, trying and failing not to sound hysterical. It's pretty obvious what they are. Lab coats, badges. Those people used to work here. All the people working here are dead. Well, that isn't stopping them from walking around, Spence said philosophically. Where did they come from? Why didn't we see them on the way in? Kaplan couldn't stop moving. If he stopped moving, he feared he'd die. And if he died, he'd become one of them. Rain spoke in a deliberate voice. When you cut the power, you unlock the doors. You let them out. Something else that was on him. No, it wasn't enough that he got one and the others killed, but he was also responsible for letting all the dead people out to kill JD. And for all he knew, Alice and Addison, too. The panic took over completely. We're never going to make it to the surface. Rain shook her head, then kicked the clip out of her rifle. I've got one in the breech and one spare mag. Spence shook his head. We are so screwed. Chapter 20. The encouraging thing for Alice was that this was all starting to look familiar. Unfortunately, each memory that was triggered had an unpleasant connotation. She walked through the abandoned corridors of the hive, dimly illuminated by the emergency lighting. Matt had wandered off, and Alice had lost track of Rain, J.D., Kaplan, and Spence. At the very least, the corridor through which she walked was empty, and so bereft of the undead horrors. Some areas she walked through meant nothing to her, but others triggered flashes. Here, the office belonging to the person in charge of Project Open Book. There, the lab where they did some of the preliminary work on the Nemesis program. Over that way were the cubicles where the support staff for pharmaceuticals worked, answering phones, processing invoices, making photocopies. She turned another corner, and the name Clarence fell into her head, as she spied a wall lined with 8 animal cages, 2 horizontal rows of 4. Each cage had wire mesh on the door, mesh that was currently covered in blood and ripped open from the inside. Was Clarence one of the animals? She couldn't remember. With each memory that came back also came the mounting frustration of what she didn't recall. She heard a noise and whirled around, but saw nothing. Typical. Again, she looked at the cages. She could not for the life of her recall what kind of animal was housed in those cages, but the evidence suggested that they had broken out on their own, and they were probably in the same condition as the hive employees they'd been spending the last half hour shooting, punching, and hitting. Then she heard the footsteps. No, not feet. The scratchy sound of clawed feet on metal floor. Tap, 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 tap. She turned to face the doorway through which she heard the noise just as a large Doberman came into view. The Doberman was covered in blood. Large chunks of flesh were missing, and Alice could see its rib cage, not to mention several internal organs, none of which seemed to be doing much of anything. The dog's eyes were watery and white. A dead dog walking. Despite its deceased state, the dog was somewhat more agile than its human counterparts, and started running down the hall toward Alice. Somehow intuiting that offering to pet it and saying "good dog" wouldn't really cut it, Alice turned and ran to the door on the far end of the corridor. Miraculously, she remembered that it was one of the chemistry labs, and it had a door that latched shut. Running as fast as she could go in the maddeningly impractical boots she'd been stupid enough to put on back at the mansion, Alice barely made it into the lab ahead of the dog. Staring through the round window in the door, she watched in horror as the Doberman leapt up and scratched at the door, trying to gain ingress, blood dripping from its teeth. Letting out a long breath, Alice turned around, and found herself face to face with the blood-covered, very dead face of Clarence White. At once, Alice finally remembered that Clarence was the person assigned to take care for the fleet of Dobermans, though Alice still couldn't for the life of her recall why they had a fleet of Dobermans down here. Animal experimentation, maybe? Certainly not beyond the realm of possibility for Umbrella. That went through her head in 1 millisecond. In the next, she hit Clarence with a series of well-placed punches to the chest, then executed a perfect spin kick that sent the guard flying into a glass shelf full of beakers and chemicals. Alice blinked. One's words came back to her. "You and I have the same employer. We all work for the Umbrella Corporation. The mansion is an entrance to the hive. You are security operatives placed there to protect that entrance." Until now, she hadn't given much thought to what that really meant. One had asked her for a report as if she was his subordinate, and apparently she was more than that. She was, if not part of his actual team, part of the same division of the company. And that meant she knew how to kick some serious butt. Amid the sound of shattering glass, Alice heard the sound of bones snapping. She hoped that meant that Clarence would stay dead. She looked down at the corpse. It didn't move, which made it unusual for corpses around here. It also had a 9mm pistol sitting in a holster. If she knew how to spin kick, maybe she knew how to shoot a gun, too. After all, she wouldn't have had a full armory in her dresser drawer if she didn't know how to use its contents, right? She certainly had nothing to lose by taking the pistol. Clarence sure as heck didn't need it anymore. Gingerly, she undid the buckle on the holster, slowly pulling the pistol out, hoping Clarence wouldn't choose this moment to come back to unlife. Then the dog crashed through a window Alice hadn't even realized was there and came at her. Fingers tightening around the grip of the 9mm, she ran for the door, and again ran through it and closed it in the nick of time. This was getting tiresome. She clicked off the safety of the 9mm. It was only a matter of time before the pooch from hell jumped back out through the same window. Turning around, she found herself confronted by 7 more Dobermans. One was missing an ear. Another was missing its throat. 2 had broken limbs. 1 had a massive gash in its side. All 7 of them leapt for her at once. Gripping the 9mm with both hands, she aimed straight for the lead Doberman's head and fired. Seconds later, she'd emptied all 16 rounds in the clip. 7 of the 16 were perfect headshots that took the dogs down. That took her out of immediate danger, but the only potential source of fresh ammo was Clarence's body in the lab, and Alice was not going back in as long as the other dog was there. Then she heard growling. Suddenly, the other dog being in the lab was less of an issue. The Doberman leapt out at her, and it was between her and the lab door. So that trick was not going to work a third time, and the 9mm was now a useless piece of metal. Alice saw some crates piled against a wall, and then her legs moved almost of their own volition. She ran to the crates, stepped up onto one, then up to another more highly piled one, then along the wall, building up momentum. Pushing herself off the wall, she delivered a powerful kick to the Doberman's head, breaking the neck bone with a resounding snap. She landed elegantly on her feet, wishing she'd remembered she could do stuff like that earlier. There had been 8 cages, so she felt confident that the danger from undead pooches had passed. However, she was still unarmed. Sort of. Turned out her body was a lethal weapon. She needed to find the others. The only chance they stood was together, if they stood any kind of chance at all. Who knew what else was lurking down here? Killer bunnies? Monster cockroaches? Zombie rats? Something even worse? Continuing through the corridors, she found a huge room full of cubicles. And movement. Dashing into the room, she saw Matt being attacked by one of the undead. Looking around, she spied a paperweight that had a picture of a white rabbit, a girl in a blue dress, and a man with a big head wearing a large hat, as well as the inscription, Alice in Wonderland. Alice thought that was more irony than she really needed as she grabbed the paperweight and slammed it into the undead woman's head. She fell to the floor, unmoving, allowing Matt to get up. However, Alice didn't spare Matt a second glance because Alice realized that she knew who this woman was, Lisa Broward. They were standing in a park. There was a statue, the same one that was wrapped in plastic in the hallway right before one and his team came in. Alice and Lisa were talking amidst the fallen leaves of autumn. "I can help you get the virus. I have access to security plans, surveillance codes, the works." Alice hesitated. "But," Lisa prompted. "But there's going to be a price." "Name it." Matt knelt down beside Lisa, breaking the spell. Alice blinked, unable to remember the rest of the conversation. What did it mean, get the virus? And why was Matt now cradling Lisa's head? "Who is she?" Alice asked. "My sister." Alice's response died on her lips. She hadn't been expecting that. After a second, she said, "I'm sorry." Something wasn't right here. Correction, something else wasn't right here. "You're not a cop, are you?" His silence spoke volumes. "If there's something you're not telling me, something she was involved with." She trailed off. She really wasn't in a position to be making threats, given how little of her own memory she retained. Still, though this entire situation down here was utterly insane, most of it made a certain amount of sense. Her and Spence, the Red Queen going mad, one's team, even the undead employees, given what little she could remember of the types of experiments that went on down here. But then there was Matt Addison. He'd been an X-Factor all along, and it was about time he came clean. Apparently, Matt himself felt the same way. He set his sister's head down and sat up straight. "Corporations like Umbrella think they're above the law. They're not. I'm part of an alliance of people who think the same. There are hundreds of us all over the world. Most of us will never meet, but we all share the same goals. Some of us give information, some of us give support. Some take more direct action. Like you? She prompted after Matt paused. He nodded. If your friends had been a little more thorough, they would have seen straight through that false ID. Then all the red flags would have gone off. Quantico, VICAP, NSA, all the rest. I could never have infiltrated the hive. Alice understood the logic, up to a point. So you sent your sister? We needed something concrete. Anything to expose Umbrella to the press. Proof of the research they were doing down here. What kind of research? There were bits and pieces in her head of what went on down here, but none of it would come into focus. The illegal kind. Genetic, viral. My sister was going to smuggle out a sample of the virus they were developing. I was meeting her today. I can help you get the virus. Suddenly things got much, much more complicated. Swallowing, Alice asked, how was she going to get it out of here? She had a contact within the hive, someone I never met. They had access to security codes, surveillance, everything she'd need. I have access to security plans, surveillance codes, the works. Thinking she needed to be very careful, she slowly asked, so then why didn't she make it? Matt shrugged. Maybe it was bad luck. Maybe she trusted the wrong person. Maybe they set her up, kept the virus for themselves. He seemed to visibly shudder. Do you have any idea what something like this T-virus would be worth on the open market? Alice was stunned. She looked around at the devastation, thought about the creatures, both human and canine, that were stumbling around down here. Worth all this? To someone. Alice wasn't sure what scared her more, that there was someone out there who believed there was someone like that out there, or that she herself might be that person.